Hi, today is Thursday, the 12th of November of 2020. My name is Alani Rodriguez, and I'm interviewing Salas for the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Mr. Salas, that this interview will be placed in the Nettie Lee Benson Latin American Collection at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you do want to talk about, please bring it up and we will talk about it. Because we are
Okay.
not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting. So I'll ask you a series of 5 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are 2 questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. Voces wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and documentation at the Benson Library at the University of Texas at Austin. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to Voces. Do you give Voces consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Benson Library?
Yes, I consent.
Do you agree to allow us to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I consent.
We have many questions in a pre-interview form that we have already filled out. We use that information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server, and before we send it to the Benson, we would have to be stripped out any contact information for yourself and any family members, so you know. So that will not be a part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Benson Library. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in a public file available to researchers at the Benson?
You mean what we're doing right now?
Yes.
Yes, of course, I consent.
On occasion, Voces receives requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone number or your email with journalists?
Sure. Yeah, yes, I consent.
Okay. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. So Keith, if you can give me a little bit of background on yourself, starting from childhood to now, a little overview, that'd be great.
Sure. Is there anything you want me to focus on, or just kind of a broad stroke?
No, yeah, just a broad stroke of yourself.
Sure. I was born in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I spent my whole childhood there. I was raised in a relatively boring suburb, but had a pretty decent childhood overall. I guess I was always a pretty nerdy kid, and um, worked pretty hard in school and all that stuff. And then was in marching band and things like that, which was a lot of fun. That was kind of like my high school experience, was hanging out with my friends, marching band, studying. I was fortunate enough to go to Yale for undergrad, so I spent 4 years there. I studied economics, which was a lot of fun. And then, as much as I love the Northeast, wanted to come back to Texas, and decided to do that as a teacher. And so I wound up actually teaching in South Texas in Roma for 2 years, which was really just a great experience. I have a lot of family that lives in the valley, so in the Mission McAllen area. And it was nice to be able to spend some time down there and experience all that and see my grandparents, my aunts, uncles, cousins, all that stuff. And after those couple years, I actually moved back in with my mom for about 6 months or a year. So I took a bike trip in between where I just flew out to Connecticut to see some of my college friends. I flew out there with my bicycle and then just rode my bike home back to Dallas. So that was a pretty, significant experience in my life. I wasn't planning on teaching after that, but I started substitute teaching and was offered a full-time job. That was a pretty cool experience because it was in a STEM academy. So it was a little bit different than what I experienced before. And did that for 2 years before deciding that as much as I like education and teaching, I'm more interested in the policy side of things, which led me to grad school. I did a master's of public affairs at the LBJ school at UT Austin. And while there, I had some really cool experiences that were outside of education. I had an internship at the Ledge, which was really significant and meaningful to me. Spent a summer in DC, and then my last internship was working for the city auditor's office for the city of Austin. And I wound up accepting a full-time job there when I graduated or shortly after I graduated, and have been there ever since. And then also at LBJ, I met my future wife, who I'm currently married to, and so that's obviously been a huge part of my life these past few years.
And whenever you were going down to Roma to teach, what grade levels were you teaching?
I was teaching 9th and 10th graders, so algebra and geometry.
And you did that for how long again, you said?
Years.
2 years. And whenever you decided to kind of leave the education job, because you mentioned that you were interested in the more the policy side of things, what specifically triggered you to get into that?
Well, I mean, I should clarify that I never actually wound up doing any policy work related to education. That was my intent when I went to grad school. I wanted to focus on education policy, and then I've always been somebody who's just curious and open to just new things. And there were a couple of classes that I took relating to criminal justice, which I really got into. Actually, one of them was a really class, but it was my internship. The state senator that I worked for was very much into criminal justice reform. And I really enjoyed that aspect of things. And so I got pulled away from education. I still very much care about education. I just don't work in it.
And so the full-time job that you currently hold, can you tell me a little bit more about that just to get a picture of what you're involved with now?
Yeah, so it is, I guess the official job title is Audit Investigator 3, but basically I investigate allegations of fraud, waste, or abuse committed by City of Austin employees and contractors. And that's a part of the city auditor's office for the City of Austin. So, which is very far from education issues, but it's things like, timesheet fraud, or somebody is alleged to be misappropriating, so stealing city resources, whether it's like printer toner, which is a big case that we had recently, or we've had others involving smaller things. But we look into that type of stuff.
And so getting into, the current climate and the purpose of the Voces Oral History Project, the Voices of a Pandemic Project, um, this job, what was the transition like into the pandemic, and and also the moment where you first realized that COVID-19 was a thing?
Uh, the the transition was actually much easier than I would have expected. Had you told me this was happening a year ago, or God, it's almost been a year, but had you told me, like back in 2018 or 19, 11, like that would have been so hard for us. Um, I'm very fortunate that so much of my job can be done from behind a computer. Um, there were things that we never thought we'd be doing in front of a computer. So, for instance, we have to, interview people. That's one of the main things that I do in my job. And that includes, sometimes uncomfortable subject interviews where you're accusing somebody of, doing whatever they shouldn't have been doing. And I think best practice is to do it in person, where you can really get a sense of their body language and all sorts of stuff like that. But we have had no choice really but to adapt to this virtual environment. And excuse me, I've been surprised by just how well we've been able to continue doing our work in this environment. So I think I answered part of your question. The other one was the other part of the question.
Yeah, so when you kind of realized that COVID-19 was going to have a big impact on your work life and stuff, and when you really realized that or like the severity of the pandemic, well, that first moment where you found out about it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I heard that there was a pandemic. back in January, February. I mean, fairly early on. Maybe not a pandemic, but I'd heard that there was a new virus and it could become a big deal, just because I listened to a lot of podcasts and followed the news fairly carefully. Um, it didn't really hit home until South by was canceled, and I forget whether or not I was instructed to start working from home before or after South by, but it was right around then. It was like the same week or something that they canceled South by, and my job told us like take your computer home. It's probably only going to be a couple of weeks, but we'll see what happens. And um, my wife works for the Dell Med School. She does program administration there, and even though she's not a doctor, you know, she kind of pays attention, hears what they're talking about and stuff, and she had a sense that this would be more than a couple of weeks. And so I took my spare monitor. I took a lot more than I think I might have otherwise, and I'm glad I did because it's been obviously a long time we've been stuck at home.
And, working from home for a lot of people has been a big transition in any field. Excuse me. So, what has working from home been like for you? And you said South by, which for the record is in the middle of March here in Austin. Um, so yeah, what was working from home like? Like the very beginning to now. Are you still working from home?
I am still working from home. It's funny, the city had been giving us direction that, they're like, right now we think we'll come back at like the end of May, and then it was like the end of June, and then, maybe October, and now they're just like done away with that. I'm hoping, I expect, and I hope that sometime early the middle of next year we'll be back in the office because I do miss seeing my coworkers and I do miss doing like in-person interviews and that type of stuff. But, it it hasn't all been bad. Like I would rather be in the office, but um, it's been nice having the ability to work from home. Obviously I'd feel differently if I'd lost my job or had to have cut my income or something major like that. But my wife and I both had that opportunity to work from home, and I've enjoyed getting to spend more time with her. Um, I mentioned to you in the beginning survey, my wife's pregnant, and we're expecting twins in a three-ish months, something like that. And I don't know. I mean, it's been really cool getting to just like watch her grow and the babies develop and stuff in a way that I probably wouldn't have been able to do had we both been away in the office all day, because we would ride our bikes to work, and when you add in that hour commute and all that, we were gone for 9-10 hours every day away from each other and all that stuff. And then you get home and you're so tired and you're just like trying to make dinner and take care of the dog and those type of things that um, you just don't have quite as much time as you might want to just be around the other person. And even though, I mean, we're still obviously, in front of our computers doing our jobs, all that type of stuff, but just being able to like see her and like get lunch together and stuff, like kind of put that together in the kitchen and all that, it's been nice. I've enjoyed getting to work outside when the weather is good. It's easier for me to do that here than it was in the office. Um, so there are some benefits. It's been challenging in other regards. Mentally, it sucks to not see. Like, it sucks to have. I don't know that this is necessarily something specific to work, but it sucks to have that just added stress of knowing that there's a pandemic going on. Like, if you go to the wrong place, talk to the wrong person, whatever it might be, forget your mask or something, then you run the risk of getting COVID. Your family could get COVID at some point. Both of us, my wife and I, both have parents and grandparents who are at risk. We've been pretty cautious, especially since she's pregnant, and it sucks to not see our friends much. We've started seeing our friends a little bit, and so they would come and like hang out in our backyard or something, but we wear masks. I mean, we're, I think, on the more cautious end of cautious. And that's all hard. I mean, we used to have people over a lot. I used to spend a lot of time just like in the office, because I know you were kind of asking about work. I used to spend a lot of time just like talking to my coworkers, and it's not wasted time, stuff like comparing notes and like ideas and strategies and whatever it might be, updating people on like what just happened or what we're learning and all that. And that's it's not gone away. I mean, we have we use Microsoft Teams, but Zoom type of stuff. We have the ability to talk to each other, and we do, but it's just not the same. It's not like when you just pop into your boss's office or your coworker's cube, something like that.
And so, from the beginning to the pandemic to now, in your perspective, what has become that new normal that everyone's kind of had to endure?
I'm sorry, you cut out just a tiny bit. What has become? Say that again.
I'm asking basically, so before the pandemic to now, in your perspective, what has become your new normal, you and your wife's new normal, in your everyday life that wasn't something you ever thought you'd be doing a few months ago?
I mean, the new normal for us is just that we're working from home. I mean, we both had jobs that we'd go to downtown. We both rode our bikes, so we're getting significantly less exercise. We still go on runs and stuff, but like when you're not riding 10, 12 miles a day, that you feel it in your body and all that. Um, our new normal is just like I said, the social aspects. We don't have that. We don't have that with our coworkers. We don't have that with our friends. We're stressing about what to do with Thanksgiving to see her family. I mean, her family is dying to see her because she's pregnant and they want to celebrate and all this stuff. And it's just like, yeah, but we can only do it if we find a way to do it safely. And we don't want to put her 90-year-old grandmother at risk, or my like 70-year-old mom at risk. And so our new normal just involves a lot more conversations about safety, danger, that type of stuff. Like we weren't, and I think even now, I mean, it's not like we are. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. I was gonna say it's not like we're particularly nervous or anxious people. I don't think we were before the pandemic, but we definitely have more anxiety than we did beforehand. I'm not sure if I'm answering your questions exactly, but let me know if there's things you want me to focus on.
No, yeah, you did definitely answer the question. So, you talked about safety measures. What kind of safety precautions have you guys been taking? It's something that everyone's kind of had to do. You have to go out to the groceries, or maybe you get them delivered. Like, what are those, little precautions that you guys are taking right now?
Yeah, we do the curbside checkout from HEB. We have been in stores. It's not like we don't go, but we try our best to do our shopping with that curbside, just because it's safer and it's free and it's easy enough for us to do. But both of us like to cook. I really like to cook. I cook most of our meals and enjoy it a lot. And I used to love going to the grocery store, so it sucks cutting that out a lot. Um, in terms of other precautions, I mean, obviously we wear our masks. I went to the dentist the other day, and because we are still doing like, as much as we can, like some of those normal things. And I went to the dentist and was in a rush, like normal, and had forgotten my mask, which is I think the first time I've forgotten my mask, like actually gotten somewhere and realized I didn't have my mask. And I was just like mortified. I was like this. I felt so bad, and the woman at the dentist's office, I don't think I don't know that she was trying to shame me, but it certainly felt like she was shaming me. I'm like, I know, I do wear a mask. I'm not like, I'm not trying to put you or anybody else at risk. So they gave me one and all that. But, we wear masks anytime we're in indoor locations. We haven't eaten at a restaurant. We've eaten once since all this began on a patio. And like I said, we've had friends over in our backyard to eat. But we're not doing like those indoor restaurants or any of that type of stuff. Um, I guess we wash our hands probably a little bit more than before, but I think the biggest thing is just limiting the amount of people that we see. I do want to say, I mentioned that we go out on runs and stuff, and we walk our dog, and we've been, doing this for years, like morning and afternoon and all that stuff. And especially now that we're both here working from home, we tend to go, my wife and I together. We don't wear masks when we're in our neighborhood just because we're in the street and we're not like walking with other people. So if there's somebody else walking their dog, we cross the street, that type of thing. And there's a house that has, I don't know, I think we counted like 14 or 16 signs posted on their windows about like where's your mask? This neighborhood should be ashamed of itself, all sorts of stuff like that. And I'm like, I look at that, like, I think you guys have some issues that you need to work out. Like, I'm like, I look around and, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like all the studies and stuff show that you can be outside without a mask as long as you are keeping your distance and that type of thing, which we always are. And they've yelled at us from the window, like, put your masks on. Like, this is insane. You guys need some help. And I'm only saying that just to say, like, I think we're being very cautious, but I think there's a level of like fear that I'm very glad we've not entered into.
Yeah. So, also, excuse me, during quarantine and stuff, I mean, you mentioned having friends over at the later time, excuse me, but a lot of people have had to innovate the way that they communicate with friends and family. And what have you guys found that have worked for you to communicate even with your grandparents when sometimes they don't really know how to use updated technology? Like, what has experience been like for you guys and your friends or your family as well?
Yeah. My mom and dad, when I speak to them, it's on the phone. I've only talked to my mom once on a video chat. She just really doesn't like it. And that was when I was telling her that like my wife was pregnant and we were expecting twins. And that one is just like, I will not share the news that I have to share unless you get on a video chat. So with my parents, that's I don't think much has changed. I probably would have been there at least once or twice to just like visit them in person. But the reality is that we didn't get up to Dallas more than a handful of times here anyways. So things haven't changed all that much for me. My wife, her family, her parents live with her grandmother, and they have like, I mean, this was the case from when my wife was growing up, so it's been like that forever. Um, and so not only is her grandmother pretty tech literate to begin with, but she has like my wife's parents there to also help. So we do what is it, Zoom calls and FaceTime and stuff like that. My wife talks to at least one of them like almost every day, probably every other day, often on video chat. And I don't think she used video chat very frequently before this, but now that's just like a staple of the way we communicate with them. And then I've had a couple Zoom calls with my family, like in the Valley, and then of course, with friends and stuff, we do Zoom and FaceTime and that. Um, but yeah, so I guess more video chat, but I don't know.
So you mentioned that you guys had to tell your mom over video chat that your wife was expecting. So I'm assuming you guys found out she was expecting during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And what was that like having to tell your family on video chat rather than maybe going in person? You see a lot of people, go, with these videos to their parents' house and telling them or those kind of special moments. What was kind of that experience like for you guys having to do it virtually?
Um, I think my wife would have loved to have been able to tell her family in person. And I think this has been hard on her and her family more than it has been on me and my family. And that's not to say that my parents aren't, elated and, super supportive and all that stuff. But I think my family has always been just a little bit like a little bit more reserved, and I think my mom has no problem using the phone, like doesn't mind that she heard that way. My dad, I think, likewise was just as happy to hear it over the phone as he would have been in person. Um, so I would have loved to have been able to tell him in person, but um, I hate to say this, but I don't feel like that I lost a ton or my parents lost a ton by not seeing that in person. I do think that my wife would have just far preferred to be able to share that news in person. I think she would have, and I think her family would have like that so much more than the way it wound up happening, which was fine. I mean, it was over a FaceTime call, and if I remember correctly, her grandmother and both her parents were there, or maybe it was just her grandmother and her mom were there together, and she got to tell them together. And so that was a lot of fun. It was, I was on the call, and so I got to watch it all happen and all that. But it, there's no substitution for telling people in person.
And going back to communication during a pandemic, what do you think, or how would you measure the importance of socialization and for everyone across the board, even yourself?
God, I mean, it's so freaking important. I mean, this is the hardest part of this pandemic is not being able to see people the way that as often and in the ways that we used to see people. Um, it's funny. My friends used to make fun of my wife and I for not going out as much as they did, and we'd see our friends probably every other week or so, something like that, or like some group of friends, whatever. But it's pretty often that we'd have a weekend where it's just my wife and I going out to dinner and hanging out, doing our thing and not seeing our friends. But when you cut that out, plus you cut out your work friends and stuff, because I mean, I would spend 8-9 hours a day in the office, and and I consider a lot of my coworkers to be friends. I enjoy their company. We'd have lunch together. We'd talk together. We'd play games together, all sorts of stuff like that, And so when you lose that aspect of it, at least the in-person one, and you cut out like your friends and you cut out your family, I mean, it just sucks. Like it's not enjoyable. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one saying this. And when we do see our friends, like one of our really close friends, their neighbor, I guess, had some kayaks that they were willing to let us all borrow. And so the first time that we hung out with them since all this had begun was sometime over the summer. They borrowed the kayaks. We took them down to the lake, in separate cars and all that. We're still trying to be socially distant and stuff. And then we got into the water, and my wife and I were in one kayak, and then our friends were in their own kayaks, so that, you're 20, 30 feet apart sometimes and all that. But just having that, just being able to kind of chat over a distance, but see the person and feel like you're doing something with them, it just made you realize how much you had lost over those months. And I mean, still losing now, and as we try to navigate the right ways to hang out with people and stuff. Yeah, it's a shitty year.
And what are methods, you talked about the effects of, your mentality, your mental health, during this time. What are some kind of methods that you use to keep, yourself sane per se? And I know you mentioned you go on walks or, you ride your bike. It seems like that's something you really enjoy. Can you tell me more about that? And if that's something that you use to kind of clear your head during all this?
Yeah, I'm probably not the best person to ask because I really feel like I haven't done nearly as good a job as I should have done. We, I mean, quite honestly, we got a lot of exercise before this pandemic. We would run 3 times or 4 times a week. We trained for a half marathon, and each year we'd run a marathon together before, and we'd ride, like I said, my ride to and from work was something like 10 or 12 miles each day. So I was getting a lot of exercise, and we're still running, but when you have a wife who's pregnant with twins and it's 5 months pregnant, you're not running the way you used to, and I'm not upset about that at all. It's so fun I'm so glad that she's able to go out and run, and I'm so impressed by her and all that. But, I mean, these are relatively I don't want to say slow, but, I mean, it's not the way it used to be. And I should be going out riding my bike just for fun and for exercise. And I really haven't been, which sucks. And that's completely on me. I just find other things to do with my time, and a lot of them are not productive to my mental health. There's only so many times that you can scroll through Reddit and read the news and all that. whenever I have an excuse to ride my bike, which I know I shouldn't be looking for an excuse, but like today I had to go down to the office, and I go down to the office maybe once a month or so, if that. But like, of course I rode my bike and it felt great and it was a beautiful day. It was a lot of fun. Um, we had my group at work, we had a 5-person we have a 5-person team, and so we used to do like monthly like lunches where we just like block it off on our calendar. We'd have 2 hours, we'd go to some restaurant or whatever and hang out. And we tried doing that virtually, and then they just kind of fell off. And so my boss is like, how do you guys feel about going to Zilker? And like, we'll each have our own little plots. We're not like on top of each other. It's not like we're at a table. Like, would you guys feel comfortable? And we all were, which is nice. And so like I rode out there, that was a decent ride. It was like 8-9 miles or something from where I live. And so those moments are so wonderful. In terms of like, how do I relax otherwise? I mean, reading, playing video games, some stuff like that. I really wish I did a better job doing other things. I've been spending more time in my backyard, which is nice. I've been gardening for a while, and so I had a nice garden this year. I'm trying to grow a winter garden, and it's coming with some success. But my first time trying to do a garden in the winter. I got a pair of binoculars. I've been doing some bird watching and stuff like that, which I feel like such an old man with these hobbies, but they help. I like them. I mean, I think that even when this pandemic is over, I know I'm going to keep gardening because I've been doing that for years, and I think I'm going to keep like bird watching and stuff like that. But it's not the same as having friends. Having friends come over and like getting to spend time doing board game nights, going out to bars with them, all that type of normal stuff. And now it's like, it's weird thinking that by the time this pandemic's over, I'm gonna have 2 kids and my life's gonna be changed. And I think, an awesome, like positive way, but it's gonna be different. Like there's no going back to the way it was last year. And I'm all right with that, but it's, this year has been hard.
Yeah, absolutely. So, besides work, kind of covered, your everyday life, what organizations were you a part of pre-COVID-19 that you were also doing during COVID-19?
The main one, I think the reason that you found me was a program called Victory Tutoring, which is a tutoring program for local high school, well, I guess elementary, middle school, and high school students. And I've been doing that ever since I started with my job with the city. They have a partnership, and they allow employees to use a couple hours a week of work time to volunteer with the program. So to actually like do tutoring and mentoring. And, as a former teacher and somebody who's just, I think, has something to give back to people and like can help with complex math and that type of stuff. I really enjoy doing it, and I think I hope I can help people. And so I've been doing that.
And so you're a volunteer with them and you got started because your work introduced you to them, correct?
That's how I found out about this program. I'd like to think that I would have like found some way to volunteer anyways, but certainly it was through work. There's no denying that.
And so what subjects do you tutor and what kind of grade level do you cover with Victory?
Um, right now, I'm tutoring a 12th grader, mostly in math. I mean, every now and then he has work in science or English or something else that I'll help him with, but it's math work. I've been extremely lucky, I think. I've been tutoring him since he was a 7th grader, I believe. So this is my 6th year with this kid, and I've watched him grow from, like a 12-year-old or something to I think he's 17 going on 18. I mean, not many people, even teachers, most teachers, like you have your kids in 9th grade, then they go to 10th grade with a bunch of other teachers and stuff. And so, so it's been awesome just like getting to have that continuity and like watching him grow and being there for him. So this is kind of a long-winded answer to a short question, but I was willing to teach or tutor at any level. My preference is always math, just because I know that better. But as I've been with this kid, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and now 12th grade. Yeah.
And so the tutoring sessions before the pandemic, what did those look like and what do they look like now?
Yeah, so before the pandemic, and I was tutoring 2 kids before the pandemic, and one of them, I haven't heard. I mean, I of course don't have their contact information and stuff, but through our coordinator, I don't know what happened to him. He just kind of fell through, and I haven't heard from him since. So I assume he's doing all right, but I sure hope so at least. But before the pandemic, I would tutor, I think normally from like either 4 to 6 or 5 to 7, I forget, but it was a 2 hour block on Thursdays, and I'd ride my bike from work downtown. It was over the Carver Library, and I'd go in. I'd friends the librarian there who I know from a different city program. So I'd normally like stop in, chat with her for a couple of minutes, and then go over to the tutoring area, sign in. We'd get, you know, on a good day, my student was already there. Oftentimes they were running a couple minutes late, which was fine because I often was running in there too late as well. But, we'd grab a room or a table, depending on what was available. And, normally the first few minutes we're just kind of chatting, like, tell me what's going on the past week, like, how you doing, like, what's new, how's school, how's home life, all that type of stuff, just like chatting. And then it would be like, what's your homework? What do you want to work on? And it was student driven in that way. If they didn't have work, then I would, depending on which student I was working with, find something. So like for the student that I had been with and still have right now, the fallback was SAT prep, because they were a very good level math for him. Like they were, I think, a challenge, but with a little bit of encouragement, with a little bit of nudges in the right direction, there were things that he was more than capable of figuring out. But I don't think he ever would have done that type of stuff without having somebody there, and I don't think he was getting that in his classes. So it was nice to be able to do that for him. But like I said, mostly it was homework. Now that ever since the pandemic started, we're finally kind of getting back into that swing. I just have this one student now, so I'm tutoring him from 4 to 5 on Thursday. So I did that just before this call today. But now that the text kind of work out and stuff, it's more of the same. It's like, what's going on? We chat for 15 minutes or so. Especially now that he's 12th grader, I'm really trying to put in some discussion each time about like, what are you going to do when you graduate? I know you're going to graduate, and I am very confident that he's going to graduate. But like, do you want to go to ACC? Do you want to go to a 4-year college? Do you want to continue working at the restaurant that you're working at? Do you want to like join the military? Like, what are you interested in? Trying to give him that space to think about it. And then how's school? What do we need to work on? And he has stuff, and he shares the screen with me, and we talk it through, and he's been doing good work.
So you tutor obviously an older high school student, but a lot of educators or tutors, any educators in general, have seen a lot of technological challenges during this online transition. With remote learning, have you experienced that at all, or has it been a positive experience for both you and your your mentee?
No, I mean we're getting by, him and I, and this type of stuff that I need to do with him is not nearly what I would need to do with him if I were his full-time teacher. Like I have no idea how like professional full-time this is your job to teach these students how they're handling this, because it seems impossible to me. Even just like one-on-one, like trying to get things to work, it took months before we had it pretty well worked out. There were issues with sound and video cutting out, with being able to share screens. We've had challenges with that. Even now, we have a system that works for us, but we haven't been able, and I don't know if it's a setting that I don't have access to or what, but we haven't been able to find a way where we can both like annotate a screen on a Zoom call. Like either he can annotate and show me, or I can annotate and show him, but we can't like work collaboratively on one. So if I want to show him something, then he has to stop sharing his screen, and I I have to like take a screenshot so I can go back to the same problem that he had, and it's a mess. I mean, it's so we don't do nearly as much of that as I think we ought to be doing. As not that I'm an educator, but somebody who's trying to help educate this kid. Um, like I mean, there's just no substitution that I found for having a whiteboard or a piece of paper where you can like he can write something, you can write on it, you can like draw arrows and move stuff around, and trying to like write the number 3 with a touchpad mouse or your like mouse. It just doesn't work well. It's ugly. It's things that are huge or things that are tiny, things that are like in the wrong spots, and you know we'd be able to do a lot more if we didn't have to do it on a remote computer screen. And for what it's worth, and I don't blame his teachers or anything like that. Like I said, I'm amazed at what they're able to do, but like I feel like the level of work that they're expecting, at least out of this one student, so it's a small sample size, but um, it's nothing like what he was bringing back last year, and it sucks. It's a loss to him, and it's a loss to everybody else who's in that boat.
And you've been obviously tutoring the student for a very, very long time, and obviously the pandemic, especially for the youth, is a very hard transition, especially high school, where it's like a big, moment in their life, and they're getting ready to graduate. But a lot of those events are kind of taken back from them. For your student in particular, do you or have you noticed any maybe changes in their behavior during isolation, or maybe they've mentioned something to you about their own frustrations or challenges?
I think that there are some silver linings for certain students, and I think the one that I am tutoring may be one of the ones who, I don't want to say he's benefiting. I think academically um, he's not being challenged the way I would like to see him challenged, but I think that he is benefiting from some of the other aspects of it. I think he's really benefiting from having a little bit more flexibility over his schedule. Um, I think he's had some, like, I mean, obviously, I don't know what his interactions are like with other students. I don't know what it's like on a day-to-day basis in his high school or any of that stuff. But um, I got the sense that he's a unique student, and I mean that in the best possible way. But I mean that to say like I don't want to say he was an outcast or anything like that. Like I don't at all think that that's the case. But he's not like he doesn't fit neatly into one of the more traditional like jock, nerd, whatever type of classifications that you might have. He always had like his own ideas. He had his own style. Like he, draws on his own clothing and does like awesome, awesome artwork and stuff. But he's like one of those kind of kids, um, and I think he's actually enjoyed not being around some of the more stereotypical high school groups. Um, I think he's also extremely lucky in that he is basically an adult. And so last summer, he got a job at a local fast food place, and he's been able to maintain his grades while keeping the job up now. So he's kind of building his own networks outside of school. He by and large speaks very highly of his job. He enjoys going, he enjoys his coworkers, he enjoys the work that he's doing. Um, he's really into skateboarding, and he's still going out and skateboarding with his friends and stuff. So, um, I don't think this would have been the case had he been a seventh grader still, but, being an older student who kind of has his own life outside of school, and one that's growing and developing, I think this is giving him a pretty nice transition. And maybe I'm an optimist, but I'm trying to find silver linings to all this, and I think that he may have some.
And during these sessions that you've had online during the pandemic, has he ever kind of expressed maybe a concern regarding the uncertainty that the pandemic brings? Has it ever been a topic that comes up when you guys, kind of check in with each other at the beginning of your sessions?
Yeah, almost every session, probably every session since this began, I brought it up in some form or fashion. Like even just today, I showed him on a news app, kind of was showing like a heat map of the hotspots in the U.S. and it was showing like the percentage change over the past couple of weeks. And so I showed it to him, and this is kind of, I guess, my teacher training, but like you're looking for ways to relate the type of stuff that they're learning in school to what's happening in the real world. And so we can talk about the percent changes and stuff like that in a casual way, but to show them that math is useful, it's important, and it's current events and all that stuff. So pretty much every single session we do something like that, or at the very least just like, how you feeling, how's everything going, and all that. He's not very concerned, I don't think, and I think a large part of that's that he's out and about in the world. He's going to work, he's skateboarding, he's like I said, I think he prefers doing high school remotely. I don't know if that's actually the case. I haven't directly asked him, but I get the sense that he's not too upset by this. He was, and I have no idea if this is like, if he has any romantic interest in this woman or anything, but he was telling me about like some woman that he used to know or whatever, who's living in, I don't know, like North Carolina or something like that, and how they're like sending each other like clothing and stuff, like, because I said that he draws on clothing and things like that. And so I think this kind of distance thing is working for him, and I kind of wish that he were a little bit more nervous. Like I don't want him to be living in fear. I'm glad that he's going out and doing this stuff, but um, I just want to make sure that he's being safe. I don't want to see him get this. I don't want to see him bring it to his mom or his dad or anything like that. So
Yeah, so kind of talking about education in a general sense, you obviously have that educational background, you're a teacher. Um, what difficulties do you see kind of arising in the educational development of students in a general sense, with remote learning, without socialization? Your experience, as a teacher, what would you compare that like if you were still doing that right now? What's kind of your idea of, the educational, um, challenges that are brought up, during this time.
yeah, I mean, I can go on forever. I know I'm long-winded already, but I think just about every aspect of this is going to be hard if you're an educator. Thinking back to my classrooms, which were by no means perfect or anything like that, but thinking back to them, like I liked to interact with the students. I like to walk around, look at their work. I like to bring people to the board. I like to call on people, and just those type of things are so much more difficult. I mean, at work, I'm part of a training board for a employee development program, and we've had to transition that to the pandemic, and it's tough. Like even as adults who on a daily basis use these web conferencing and are used to doing this 8 hours a day, it's it's hard even for them. I can't imagine when the stakes actually matter. I mean, it's important what happens, especially when you're talking about like the foundations. Like I don't know how you teach reading and like how you teach what a negative number and stuff is online. I don't know how you teach long division when you can't like draw and like on their paper and work with them and cross stuff out and all that. Because like I said, the challenges of trying to do that with a mouse, and maybe there's better technology out there. I'm sure that there are teachers who have like tablets with pens and stuff, but at least from what I'm trying to do, it's tough. And it seems like the solution, at least based on what I'm seeing with my student, is that they're the complexity of the questions is just much lower, at least, and I'm speaking mostly for math because that's what I see and that's what I taught, but the complexity is lower than I expected. All these questions, at least that I've seen, and I'm sure it's not like this everywhere, but the questions I've seen are multiple choice, which it's just, like the work is what counts. Like, it's great if you can figure out that the answer is 8, but if you can't, like, if you don't understand how you got there and can't show like the steps and stuff, then what's the point, And I I just see that as just such a loss and such a challenge for a teacher to really get in there and understand. And then you just have some other things that are just stupid, like trying to graph something. And I'd experienced this, as a teacher, I experienced this when there was some remote work that my student was doing, even before the pandemic, because obviously they got assignments that were online and on the computer and stuff. But like you're talking about trying to calculate the slope and adding the rise and the run, and just the screen resolution I've experienced, or like the way that like the picture's imported, you can't tell. And I'm sitting there as a former math teacher and who knows without a doubt like how to calculate rise over run, and I'm like, yep, that looks like 4/3, and then the answer is 5/4, and then you just answer. I put that in quotes because like, it's not our fault if the resolution doesn't work or if the picture doesn't like format properly, and so you have stuff like that. There's just no substitution for being able to be in front of another person and to talk with them. And also, sorry, I'm just going to go on. Like, I don't know what happens in the classroom right now. I only see what happens one-on-one with the student and I, but you learn so much, and as a teacher you rely so much on the students in your classroom and the other students that are there. I hope that they are finding ways to encourage students to work with each other and to like help each other and teach each other and check each other's work and all that type of stuff. But based on what I've seen just technologically, my guess is that that's a challenge. And that's another thing that's just such a shame to lose.
And so, all these kind of challenges that come up during the pandemic, how would you measure the importance of, a supplemental education like victory during this time, especially when maybe, this is talking in a general sense, but maybe a student isn't getting, the attention that they would get in a classroom setting. Where do you think victory, or how do you think victory plays a tremendous impact in providing the extra education to a student during a pandemic?
Yeah, I think, and maybe I'm just being big headed, but I think that I probably have a very big impact on my student. I don't think that I'm teaching him anything that he doesn't know. I don't think I'm really like, um, I mean, I don't think I'm helping him that much academically. Like we go through his homework and I check his work and all that. But I think having a steady presence, somebody who's willing to be there just to talk, where you as a student know that like this person is there only because of you. I mean, there's nobody else, like I'm not getting paid to be there. I'm not getting like, you know, awards or anything like that for being there. I'm just there because it's fun and I enjoy it and I like this kid, and it makes me feel good about myself and all that. Um, and I think that is really helpful. And I think particularly for us because it's been so long. I mean, he's like I said, 6 or 7 years, something like that. So I've been with this kid 6 years, I think. Um, I mean, that's a real relationship at that point, week in, week out, for even if it's only for an hour. Like I've watched this kid grow. He knows me. I know him. We feel comfortable with each other. Um, I think that's a big help. I mean, I think it's similar to like when I'm talking to my college friends on Zoom or something. I think it just gives some continuity and some like outlet for him, and um, and I think that's just far more important than any actual like knowledge that I'm sharing with them. Like I said, I mean, I'm not sharing anything particularly novel or important, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a great note to kind of wrap this up on. Is there anything else that you think you could speak to in terms of, the Victory program as a whole that maybe we haven't gone over?
Uh, I mean, I want to say that I really appreciate that Victory exists. I mean, it's something that I look forward to every week. Like I joke to it's not a joke. I tell my coworkers that those are my favorites. It used to be 2 hours, but now an hour. It's my favorite hour of the work week. Um, I guess I said a second ago that I didn't get paid to be there. Technically, I guess I do since it's work, but like I don't have to do that. But yeah, it's just it's really nice for me. I think it's a great program. I have no idea how it's working with people who are new to this year. Like I've had several students over the years because I normally do two at a time, and I've had some for a couple of years, and then they get too busy with band and stuff, and so they leave, and I get another kid, and all that. Um, I don't know how I'd even really begin trying to build a relationship with a new student right now virtually in the pandemic would just be so weird. Not to say that I wouldn't try or be open to it. I would. I think that there's new students, and there are always going to be students who would benefit from this type of program. So I hope that they are getting their name out there and finding new students to take advantage of this. But I'm just so grateful that I already have such a strong relationship with my student because it's made this transition just so much easier than I think it would be for other people.
Well, great. Keith, thank you so much. This concludes our interview for the Voces Oral History Project, Voices of a Pandemic. So thank you so much for doing this and sharing your story and the impact of Victory on students.
All right, you're welcome. It was nice talking to you.